Nowhere in the Bible do you see an unborn child as being described as anything other than a real person. There are a lot of cultures that don't think this way. There are a lot of cultures that think that a baby doesn't actually become a human being up until the point that they're a year old, or sometimes even 5 years old. They say, a lot of cultures would say that the soul does not enter the child until it's 1. But if you really understand what is going on here in Psalm 139, David is saying that he was loved even when he was in his mother's womb. He was really a person even at that point. He was a real human being. And so the first thing that we need to realize is the Bible teaches that an unborn child is a human being, and to murder an unborn child is to commit murder against a human being and deserves to be punished. But there are a lot of people, even a lot of Christians, that have looked at these verses and they have remained unconvinced. They still have a lot of questions. They say, you know, that sounds nice and everything, but I still think that abortion is something that is good. There are a lot of people in America who say the woman has a right to do what she wants to do with her own body. There are a lot of people who are in favor of abortion who would say those words. A woman has a right to do what she wants to do with her own body. And to American ears, that sounds so convincing. Because when you use the word right, or you use the word choice, then you are dealing with something that an American holds down at the deepest core of their being. We believe that we always have a choice. We believe that we are free. We believe that we have rights. And when you describe something as a right, you're immediately going to have an American want to believe you. Because our culture has taught us that our rights and our freedoms are so, so important. And so when you talk about abortion, then that would sound bad. But when you talk about choice, then the American is going to say that sounds so good. And that's why abortionists call themselves pro-choice in America. They want you to believe that this is a matter of individual liberty. They want you to say this is about reproductive freedom. They want you to think this is about reproductive rights. And so that's the sort of language that the pro-abortionists will use in America because they know that Americans will listen to that. Here's a couple of reasons that you shouldn't believe that sort of propaganda. First of all, you should think about it from a scientific standpoint. From a scientific standpoint, the baby that exists inside a mother's womb is not her body. It is not her body. The abortionist is saying the woman has the right to do what she wants with her own body, but this is not a situation where she's dealing with her own body. Half of the chromosomes in that little baby, at the very moment that the sperm combines with the egg, when it becomes a zygote, at that very moment, half of the chromosomes came from her, and half of them came from him. That zygote, that single cell right there in the beginning, is not her body. It has an entirely different genetic makeup from her. It is not a part of the mother. And so when the abortionist starts to talk about how the woman has the right to do what she wants to do with her own body, say, well, yeah, sure she does. But this is not a situation where she's dealing with her own body. This is another human being. This is another person, and she does not have the right to kill that person. In fact, Americans don't even have a decent answer for when the baby becomes a real human baby. When you're talking with someone who is pro-abortion, they'll say, well, that blob of tissue that is inside that woman, that's part of the woman's body. But what they're not able to tell you is when it becomes a human being. None of them are able to do that. Some of them will say it becomes a valid human being during the last 3 months of pregnancy. And the reason that they'll say that is they'll say that is the point where the baby is able to survive without the mother. Let's think about this for a second. There are a couple of reasons why you should not believe what they're talking about. Here's the first one. It is possible to have a baby born prior to the last 3 months of pregnancy and have it live. That's the first problem with that argument. I had a buddy of mine in Mississippi. His baby was so premature that he could take his wedding ring like this. And he said he could put it over that baby's arm like it was a bracelet. And there was plenty of room for it to move around. That's how tiny the baby was when it was born. So it is possible for a baby to survive when it is born in the second trimester. And perhaps with medical advances, it could be born even before that and be a valid human life. And then the abortionist is going to come back at you and they're going to say, yeah, but it's not able to survive on its own. Dustin, is Gloria able to survive on her own right now? Gloria is about yay big, and she is not able to survive on her own. Can she get her own food? Can she get her own, can she open up the little baby jar and feed herself? Can she go out and work, earn a wage? So up until the point that the kid is quite a bit older, they can't actually survive on their own either. And so the abortionist argument doesn't make sense from that standpoint either. So from a scientific standpoint, it is not a part of the woman's body. She doesn't have a right to do with it what she wants. But from a scriptural standpoint, and I think this is much, much, much more important, she doesn't have the right to kill her own baby. Personhood is ultimately a religious question, not a scientific one. When the scientist looks at all of his data, he is ultimately going to interpret that data based on certain faith assumptions that he has in his own mind. And so someone who is a radical abortionist is never going to look at the scientific data and come to the right conclusion. It is ultimately going to take a change in the way that they view their faith itself. We need to turn to the Bible to see what the real God says. If you look at Luke chapter 1, verse 35, and this is another verse that informs you a lot about what an unborn baby is like. And the angel answered her. And this is an angel that is speaking to Mary. And the angel said, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God." When we went through the book of John together, one of the things we talked about just about every single week, because something that you should be so familiar with at this point, is that Jesus Christ is completely 100% God, and He is also completely 100% man. Jesus is one person who has two natures. He has a divine nature and a human nature. At what point did God the Son become a human being? It was this point right here. Right here in Luke chapter 1, when the Holy Spirit came upon Mary, that is the moment where God the Son became a human being, where He took to Himself a real human body and a real human soul at the point of conception by the power of the Holy Spirit. Think about what the angel is saying here. He is not saying that there is a part of Mary that is going to become the Son of God at some later point. But at the very point of conception, Jesus is a child. He is a human being. This is important. You might have a choice when it comes to your body, but you do not have a choice when it comes to someone else's body. You are not allowed to murder an unborn child. The abortionist will often say, what if there's some sort of deformity? Isn't it more humane to have an abortion if there's some sort of deformity? In the United States, as soon as the doctor finds out that you're pregnant, then he's going to start planning all of the tests that you have to have. And one of the tests that is not mandatory in the United States, but it's done on everyone just about, is a test for Down syndrome. They start to test you for all sorts of deformities that could possibly exist in the baby. And this is such standard practice that if you don't want these tests, you actually have to sign a waiver saying, no, I don't want the test. It is standard medical practice to dispose of any child in America that has a deformity. That's just what we do. That's what most of our doctors are going to recommend.